My name is Samuel Connor Hayes, and for 11 years, I was the cornerstone of Hartwell Brennan and Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms. I wasn't just another lawyer in an expensive suit. I was the guy they called when Fortune 500 companies faced their most complex legal challenges. Mergers, acquisitions, regulatory compliance, crisis management. When CEOs couldn't sleep at night, they called me. My specialty was what we called impossible cases, the kind of legal tangles that made other firms politely decline representation. Patent disputes involving cutting-edge technology, international contract negotiations that spanned 5 different legal systems, class action lawsuits that could destroy entire industries. I had a 94% success rate, the highest in the firm's 100-year history. But success in corporate law isn't just about winning cases. It's about building relationships, generating revenue, and bringing in new clients. Over my decade-plus tenure, I had personally brought in over $40 million in billings. The pharmaceutical merger I orchestrated in 2019 alone netted the firm $8 million in fees. My client retention rate was perfect. Once companies worked with me, they never went anywhere else. I lived and breathed that firm. 80-hour weeks were normal. I missed my daughter's piano recitals, my son's baseball games, family vacations, anniversary dinners. My marriage fell apart in year 9, not because of any dramatic betrayal, but because I had gradually become a stranger in my own house. Sarah took the kids to Portland after the divorce, and I threw myself even deeper into work because it was the only thing I knew how to do. Then the firm decided to bring in fresh leadership. Victoria Sterling arrived in March 2023 as the new managing partner, recruited from a white-shoe New York firm with promises of modernizing our operations and expanding our national presence. She was 42, Harvard Law, with silver hair she wore in a severe bob and designer glasses that probably cost more than most people's car payments. During her first all-hands meeting, she spoke about optimizing human resources and leveraging our competitive advantages more efficiently. I should have seen it coming. Victoria's first move was restructuring our partnership model. Instead of the traditional system where senior partners had significant autonomy, she centralized decision-making under her authority. Client relationships that I had spent years building suddenly required her approval to maintain. Cases I had been handling independently now needed committee oversight. The writing was on the wall when she hired Marcus Webb as her deputy managing partner. Marcus was everything I wasn't. 10 years younger, Ivy League pedigree, more focused on networking than actual legal work. He had never tried a case in federal court, never negotiated a billion-dollar merger, never pulled an all-nighter to save a client from regulatory disaster. But he looked the part, spoke the corporate buzzwords fluently, and understood that modern law firms were businesses first, legal practices second. In our first one-on-one meeting, Victoria made her position clear. Sam, your technical skills are impressive, but this firm needs to evolve. We're looking for partners who can adapt to new methodologies and embrace collaborative leadership structures. Translation: you're old school, and old school doesn't fit our vision. Over the following months, I watched my role systematically dismantled. My biggest clients were reassigned to Marcus, supposedly to distribute workload more evenly. The cases I kept were the challenging ones with lower profit margins. The pro bono work, the complex litigation that required actual legal expertise rather than just relationship management. My office was moved from the prestigious corner suite I'd occupied for 5 years to a smaller space on the 3rd floor. When I mentioned this seemed like a demotion, Victoria explained it was part of optimizing our space allocation for maximum collaborative potential. The final insult came during the annual partnership review. Victoria sat across from me in the conference room, Marcus beside her taking notes, as she delivered what she called performance feedback. Sam, we appreciate your dedication, but frankly, your approach to client relations feels outdated. You focus too heavily on the legal details and not enough on the business relationship aspects. Our clients need partners who understand their broader strategic objectives. This from a woman who had never spent a weekend in the office researching obscure case law to find the precedent that would save a client millions of dollars, who had never sat with a CEO at 3 in the morning, walking them through the implications of a regulatory change that could destroy their company if handled incorrectly. Also, she continued, we've noticed some resistance to our new collaborative frameworks. The firm is moving in a different direction, and we need partners who are excited about that journey. The termination meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. They offered me a generous severance package, 8 months' salary, extended benefits, and a glowing letter of recommendation. In exchange, I would sign a non-compete agreement and a non-disclosure clause about firm operations. Victoria made sure to emphasize how much they valued my contributions and how difficult this decision was for everyone involved. Marcus nodded sympathetically throughout, occasionally making supportive noises about my distinguished career and significant legacy. I signed the papers without argument and packed my office that same afternoon. 11 years of my life fit into 4 cardboard boxes and a briefcase. But here's what Victoria didn't know. During my years as senior partner, I had quietly maintained detailed records of everything. Every client conversation, every strategic decision, every internal memo. Not for any malicious purpose. It was simply how I practiced law. In complex cases, documentation wasn't just helpful, it was survival. I also knew things. About clients who were considering switching firms. About pending cases that required specific expertise. About regulatory challenges that were coming down the pipeline that only someone with my experience would recognize. Most importantly, I knew that Hartwell, Brennan and Associates had built their reputation on the foundation I had laid, and that foundation was more fragile than Victoria realized. 3 days after my termination, I received a call from Elizabeth Morrison, senior partner at Cromwell and Associates, one of Boston's oldest and most respected firms. We had been opposing counsel on several cases over the years, and she had always been impressed with my work. Sam, I heard about Hartwell's recent changes. Are you interested in exploring new opportunities? I was. Cromwell and Associates offered me something Victoria never had, respect for expertise and autonomy to practice law the way I knew it should be practiced. They made me a senior partner immediately, with a client development budget and the freedom to pursue the kinds of complex cases that had built my reputation. More importantly, they understood that in high-stakes corporate law, relationships matter, but competence matters more. Clients don't care how well you network if you can't deliver results when everything is on the line. Within 2 months, 3 of my former clients had followed me to Cromwell and Associates, bringing with them over $12 million in annual billings. These weren't clients I had poached. They were companies that had worked with me for years and trusted my judgment more than they trusted the Hartwell firm name. The pharmaceutical company whose merger I had orchestrated fired Hartwell when Marcus mishandled a routine regulatory filing, creating complications that took 6 months to resolve. They retained Cromwell specifically to work with me on their next acquisition. The tech startup I had guided through their IPO process brought their follow-up legal work to my new firm after Victoria's team missed a critical patent filing deadline. That mistake cost the client a potential licensing deal worth $40 million. By month 6, the exodus was accelerating. Not because I was actively recruiting, I was simply practicing law at the level my former clients expected. When they realized that expertise wasn't transferable to whoever happened to be assigned their cases, they made the obvious choice. The turning point came when Meridian Industries, a defense contractor that represented 15% of Hartwell's annual revenue, terminated their relationship after Marcus's team mishandled a government compliance review. The mistake triggered a Department of Defense investigation that could have cost Meridian their federal contracts. I received the call on a Tuesday morning. Sam, this is General Richardson at Meridian. We have a situation that requires your specific expertise. Are you available? I was. The DoD investigation was exactly the kind of high-stakes regulatory challenge I had built my career on. It required understanding not just the legal framework, but the political implications, the industry context, and the personalities involved in the decision-making process. Within 3 weeks, I had negotiated a settlement that satisfied the Dodd investigators while protecting Meridian's contracts. The client was so impressed that they immediately retained Cromwell and Associates for all their future legal needs, a relationship worth over $8 million annually. Victoria called me the day after the Meridian announcement appeared in the legal trade publications. "Sam, I think there's been a misunderstanding about your departure. Perhaps we moved too quickly on some decisions. Would you be interested in discussing a return to Hartwell? We've restructured our partnership model again, and there might be opportunities that would interest you." I let her finish before responding. "Victoria, I appreciate the call, but I'm very happy at Cromwell. We have a different philosophy about practicing law here." "What kind of philosophy?" "We believe that expertise matters. That clients deserve partners who understand their business, not just their billings. That good legal work requires experience, not just enthusiasm." The silence stretched between us. "I understand you're still working with some of our former clients," she said finally. "I'm working with clients who chose to retain my services. That's how the legal profession works." "Well, I hope you understand that non-solicitation clauses are unenforceable when clients initiate the contact, which they did. Victoria, these companies didn't follow me because I recruited them. They followed me because they needed legal representation they could trust." After we hung up, I sat in my new corner office at Cromwell and Associates, looking out at Boston Harbor, thinking about the path that led here. Victoria had made a calculated decision that my value to the firm was less than the cost of my salary and autonomy. She had been wrong, but not in the way she probably expected. The mistake wasn't underestimating my individual worth. It was misunderstanding what made Hartwell successful in the first place. She thought it was the firm's reputation, the prestigious address, the impressive client roster. But those things were symptoms, not causes. What made Hartwell successful was the expertise and relationships that partners like me had built over years of excellent work. When you remove that foundation and replace it with buzzwords and process optimization, the structure collapses. 6 months later, I heard that Hartwell, Brennan, and Associates was quietly exploring merger opportunities with larger firms. Their revenue had dropped 30% in a year, and several junior partners had left for competitors. Marcus Webb had been reassigned to business development, which in law firm speak means they don't trust him with actual legal work anymore. Victoria was still managing partner, but rumor had it that the senior partners were questioning her strategic vision, apparently optimizing human resources and leveraging competitive advantages hadn't translated to sustainable profitability. I didn't take any satisfaction in their struggles. Well, maybe a little, but mostly I felt grateful for the opportunity to practice law the way it should be practiced, with expertise, integrity, and respect for the complexity of the work. At Cromwell and Associates, I had built something better than what I'd lost. A practice based on competence rather than politics, substance rather than style. My clients knew that when they called me at midnight with a crisis, I would have answers, not just sympathy and promises to circle back after consulting the team. The legal profession is supposed to be about serving clients, solving problems, and upholding justice. Victoria had turned it into a business optimization challenge, and she'd learned the hard way that some things can't be optimized. The last I heard, Hartwell was still struggling to replace the institutional knowledge that had walked out the door with partners like me. Turns out that 11 years of experience can't be downloaded to a replacement in a 2-week transition period. Sometimes late at night when I'm preparing for a complex case, I think about that conversation with Victoria, about her certainty that the firm needed to evolve, that my approach was outdated, that success required embracing new methodologies. She was right about evolution. But evolution means adapting to survive and thrive, not discarding what works in favor of what sounds impressive in management consulting presentations. The legal profession will always need people who understand that behind every contract, every regulation, every lawsuit. There are real consequences for real people. That expertise matters. That experience has value. That some things can't be reduced to collaborative frameworks and strategic objectives. Victoria learned that lesson the expensive way. I learned it too, but my education came with a better ending. These days, I still work long hours, still miss some family events, still pull all-nighters when clients need me. The difference is that now I work for a firm that values what I bring to the table, that understands the connection between expertise and results. And when young partners ask me for advice about building a successful practice, I tell them what my mentor told me 20 years ago. Master your craft, serve your clients, and never let anyone convince you that competence is outdated. It served me well, and it will serve them well too. The market has a way of correcting mistakes, even when the people making them don't realize they're mistakes until it's too late. A year later, I ran into Marcus at a legal conference in New York. He looked tired, older somehow, and when he saw me across the room, he hesitated before walking over. "Sam," he said, extending his hand. "How are you doing?" "Very well, thanks. You?" He forced a smile. "Can't complain. Listen, I owe you an apology. The way things went down at Hartwell, it wasn't right." I studied his face. There was genuine regret there, mixed with something else. Defeat, maybe. Water under the bridge, Marcus. Victoria's gone, you know. Board voted her out 3 months ago. They brought in someone from Morrison and Klein to try to turn things around. I nodded but said nothing. "The thing is," he continued, lowering his voice, "we lost the Blackstone account last week. That was our biggest remaining client. They said the quality of work had declined, and they needed a firm with more institutional knowledge. Blackstone Industries. I had landed that account 6 years ago, nursed it through 2 major acquisitions and a regulatory nightmare that could have destroyed them. They were worth $15 million annually to Hartwell." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. You were right, Sam, about everything. About how law firms should operate, about what clients really need." I was so focused on playing the game that I forgot why we were playing it in the first place. He paused, then added quietly, "Blackstone retained Cromwell and Associates, didn't they? Specifically requested you." I didn't answer, but my expression probably gave it away. I thought so. Marcus managed a real smile this time. "Good for them, good for you." As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not for Victoria, she had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. But for Marcus, who had been caught between his ambition and his conscience and had chosen poorly. That evening, I called my ex-wife Sarah for our weekly check-in about the kids. After we finished discussing school schedules and weekend plans, she said something that surprised me. "You sound different lately, Sam. Happier." "Do I?" "Yes, more like the person I married. Before everything got so complicated." I thought about that as I hung up. Maybe she was right. Maybe finding my way to Cromwell hadn't just been about professional vindication. Maybe it had been about remembering who I was supposed to be. The next morning, I walked into my office to find a handwritten note on my desk. It was from Elizabeth Morrison, my managing partner at Cromwell. "Sam, the American Bar Association wants to feature you in their quarterly journal. Article about ethical leadership in corporate law? Interested?" I smiled and reached for my pen. Some stories, I realized, are worth telling.